Good afternoon. Welcome to People Connect LLC, and thank you for joining our first virtual conference, The Unsexy Skills to Make You an Unstoppable Leader. Our keynote speaker is Mr. Cento Sharp, but before we transition to the presentation, let me share with you who we are. People Connect is your one-stop solution for networking and connecting the various groups within an online community. From professional speakers and businesses to organizations, exhibitors and venue vendors, we inclusively serve everyone. But that's not all. We're also an open platform for the public, connecting you with the conferences and events you need. Now let's delve into the services we offer. First, we provide a platform for you to find and promote events and conferences, whether you are an attendee looking for the next big conference or an organizer promoting a local meetup, we've got you covered. Secondly, we offer a platform to promote your services. Are you a freelancer, designer, a professional speaker, or perhaps a venue vendor? Create a professional profile with a complete bio and your YouTube videos to make your services visible to other groups. Thirdly, we provide a space for you to network and contact other members. This allows you to seek partnerships, services, and sponsorship opportunities. It's all about making connections that count. Next, we offer a promotional platform for your venue space. Whether it's a convention center or a cozy coffee shop, showcase your space to the right audience. We also provide a personal portal for you to manage subscriptions, events, auto notifications, and emails. This portal is tailored to your membership profile, whether you're a speaker, a business, or a venue vendor. And finally, you can leverage our blog section. It's full of articles on a wide range of subjects, perfect for gaining insights into trending topics and research purposes. So there you have it. It's a comprehensive suite of services designed to help you connect, network, and grow. And remember, at People Connect, your network is your net worth. So why wait? Expand your horizons, broaden your opportunities, and join our community. The world is waiting to connect with you. And now let's transition to our keynote speaker as we invite you to join our next segment as we dive into our first virtual conference. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and start by introducing our keynote speaker, Mr. Cento Sharp, who I've known for a long time. He is the principal management and technology consultant with Cento Sharp Consulting, LLC, which supports single-person entrepreneurs and billion-dollar professional service firms in optimizing their business and technology investments. One of the most prolific and versatile speakers who has a wealth of knowledge and broad expertise, including project management, cybersecurity, human resources, to name a few. Cento Sharp is also a pharmacy school graduate with a Master of Science in Medical Cannabis Science and Therapeutics from the University of Maryland School of Pharmacy. I've always said this to him as I've known him for 20 years. He lives up to his last name. Today, Cento will be speaking to us about the unsexy skills that make you an unstoppable leader. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Cento Sharp.
Hi, thank you so much for that introduction, Sharon. And you're right, we've known each other for a really long time, professionally and personally. It's been great to learn from you over the years. So I am very excited to be here to provide this first webinar for People Connect and to hopefully provide some really great information that can help you with your career as well as your business when it comes to those unsexy skills that make you an unstoppable leader. So with that said, Sharon, I'm going to share my screen if that's okay. Okay, let me know if you can see that.
Yes, we can.
Okay, all right. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We have a small group today. So please jump in with questions as I touch on each of the resources that we're going to be looking at. As Sharon said, I am Cento Sharp. I have about 20 to 25 years, depending on who you ask, experience in doing digital transformation and large scale implementation projects on IT, business, and finance. Ton of credentials that I've been able to garner throughout my career because I've had great leaders that have helped me at different points in my career. So that's what brings me here today for us to talk about grit, resilience, and the power to say no. I just gave a brief introduction of myself. I'll give a few more details as well because I think they'll be helpful to the discussion today. And then we're going to have a brief discussion on the sexy in-demand skills first, because I think before we talk about the unsexy skills, we need to talk about the sexy skills or the skills that are in demand that companies are looking for. Right now, it's a really hard job market. If you're looking to make a change, or if you're looking to gain employment, or maybe you've lost employment, the conversation has changed. The industry is being disrupted. So I'm going to share a couple of resources with you that'll help you find out how can you make sure your resume and your skills profile aligns with what's in demand for the next 4 to 5 years. That's going to be really important for the future of work and the future of your earning potential. So I'm going to share that as discussion 2. Discussion 3, that's when we're going to get into those unsexy skills according to the title. The ones that are a little bit more of a hidden demand. You won't find those skills in any of the job descriptions that are being posted. You won't talk about those skills in any of the interviews that you enter into, but those are the skills that will make you that unstoppable leader. Whether you're working for someone else in a major corporation, for example, or if you're an entrepreneur and you're working on your own business, these skills are going to help you as well. Discussion 4, we're going to talk about a helpful solution to the crisis that's coming out of that discussion 3. I'm going to share a couple of things that I'm working on personally throughout my career that's really allowed me to offer something that can help with those hidden skills. So professionals aren't left behind in terms of what's next from a technology standpoint, as well as from a business and development standpoint. And then lastly, we'll have an open discussion, just a Q&A. So for the format that we're going to use today with a smaller group, I encourage you, if you have questions, just go ahead, unmute, and stop me along the way. I want this to be an interactive discussion. I'm here to serve you today and to provide hopefully some valuable information that you can use. So I want to stop right there and just see if there's any questions or thoughts on the agenda before we move forward.
Not yet.
So a little bit about my background. As Sharon mentioned, we've known each other for a really long time. We go back at least 20 years. When I first started my career as a consultant, it almost didn't happen. And what I mean by that is that the very first job that I got as a full-fledged consultant, I could have lost that job the very first week that I started. And the reason being is that I was interviewed for a consulting position, a consulting analyst position, doing large scale system implementations for mortgage banking. Went through the interview process, aced it, got the job offer. It was the most money that I had ever earned in my life. This was my big moment when I got this job. Well, I started on day one. On day one, I met with my boss. My boss gave me manuals to the system, the mainframe system that were this thick. And for the modules that I owned, it was 4 of them. Each module had a manual that thick. So that was fine for me. I was up for the challenge. I looked at it kind of funny because it seemed to be a lot of information, but I took it in stride and said, hey, I'm ready. The very next day, my second day on the job, I was sent out to our client site because at that point, I was a consultant at that point. I needed to join the team for the implementation project. So I went to the client site, and the very first meeting was in a boardroom. And it started out that morning with all of the consultants sitting around the table, all of the clients, executives, and leadership teams sitting around the table for a project status update. Well, in this meeting, everybody started going around the room providing their updates. 5 minutes into the meeting, yelling breaks out. The client was yelling at the project implementation team. The project implementation team was yelling at the client. And for me, with it being just my second day, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I had never witnessed adults upset with each other like that and yelling in the workplace. And here I am, a fresh-faced consultant, excited about the opportunity, ready to make the most money that I ever made in my career. And all of a sudden, I find myself in this toxic work environment. Every minute that passed in that meeting was just more yelling, more blame, more finger pointing across the board. So about 15 minutes into the meeting, right before we get to the round table where it's my turn to give an update, at that point in my career, I didn't realize that I could have said, "Hi, team, I'm glad to be here. This is my first week with the organization. I can't wait to get my hands around the problems that have arisen with the project. I'm really excited. I'm going to be staying late with the rest of my team to make sure that we can get the project on track." I didn't have the knowledge or the know-how or the experience to give that kind of update at that point in my career. So right before it got to me, our project manager, Debbie James, went to the front of the room, the front of the long table that everybody was sitting around. And Debbie said, wait a minute, stop right here. I don't want us to be disrespectful towards each other. I want us to be able to work together. I will accept the blame for where the project is right now. I really want us to be able to work through this. Client, I understand that my team hasn't provided everything that you've needed to be successful. And client, we realize that you haven't always come to the meetings that we've set up or provided deliverables that we've asked for. So we are going to agree to work together from this point on. Debbie was amazing in that moment. Her leadership, it changed me. One, because it saved my you know what from not having to give that update that I was unprepared to give. Had I frozen in that moment, my career probably would have ended as a consultant, because at that point, you're labeled as, oh, he's not ready. He's not capable. That is what imposter syndrome is defined as, that moment for me. So Debbie saved my you know what by being able to take control of that meeting, bring everybody back to attention and say, look, we're going to be respectful as we work together. We're going to collaborate. We won't be nasty towards each other as we move this project forward. And she said, hold me accountable for the outcome. I looked at Debbie and my eyes were just as wide as saucers at that point, because she changed me to the point where I said, you know what, Cento, I said this on the inside in my mind in that meeting. I said, when I grow up, that's what I want to be, a project manager like that. So I have this on the screen, the credentials that I have. Because of Debbie's inspiration for me, over the past 25 years, team, I can tell you, I've never had a project that was behind schedule when it came to implementation or over budget. She really changed me and inspired me to not only do great project management work, but also to create safe spaces for the people that I worked with on my projects. I know, Sharon, you can probably speak to a story of when there was a time where I stood up for our team. When we had a very demanding manager and leader. And in that moment, we just weren't in her good favor as a team. Even though I felt that everyone was trying their absolute level best, So there are times when, as a leader, you have to show that grit and resilience, and you have to have the power to say no. So I've seen those moments. So what we're talking about today is how I'm packaging that particular experience so I can share that with more people around this topic. Grit, resilience, the power to say no. I've seen a lot of that in digital transformation over the past 20 to 25 years. The credentials that I have, they really teach you knowledge, skills, and abilities, and basically how to have political agility as you move through and navigate your career. So that's what we're going to get into, some of the skills that are needed, that are sexy and in demand. So you know exactly where to find those and how to incorporate those into your professional development and your resume, but also those unsexy skills, the hard skills that have come from each one of these credentials that have been part of my portfolio and learning experience throughout my career. So I want to stop right there, just see if we have any questions or comments or thoughts before we move forward.
I don't have anything at the moment, and if anyone else, I mean, please jump in. I see we have someone else who has joined.
All right, so it's great. We have additional people joining. For
Okay.
those that are joining, please, if you have questions or thoughts, feel free to put those comments into the chat or actually unmute and stop me along the way. We have a small group today, so I want this to be interactive as much as possible. All right, so I'm going to share a few resources with you. We are going to look at these resources together, make sure we're aligned. I can answer any questions on them because I think they'll definitely be helpful in your career as well as your business if you're an entrepreneur. So first, team, we're going to start with the World Economic Forum. How many of you are familiar with the World Economic Forum? Has anybody ever heard of the World Economic Forum? Do you follow them on LinkedIn, perhaps?
No, I have not heard of them.
No,
All
I
right.
have not either.
Okay, excellent. So the World Economic Forum, it's an annual meeting of business leaders from across the world. So global business leaders, politicians, those who make legislation and laws across the world in different countries, they meet together each year to determine what are the top priorities globally when it comes to business, economics, finance, and things like that. So one of the key takeaways that you should be aware of for the World Economic Forum is this report right here, the Future of Jobs Report 2023. This is the one that they put out last year. They're currently working on the one for 2024. But what this report shows you is for the next 4 to 5 years, what jobs, what skills are going to be in demand globally. So it really gives you an idea of where jobs are growing in terms of which job titles, job responsibilities, and which ones are in demand, as well as which ones may be shrinking, right? There are several industries where artificial intelligence and technology is becoming so robust that it's causing companies to be able to let some of those people go and save that money because now their technology can do it. So we're going to go ahead and jump into this report. I'll provide all of these resources, of course, after our talk, but I really want to share just a few points in this report for you to take a look at. So we have the 2023 report. On page 3, we have the table of contents. A few sections that I think you really need to look at right here. So the jobs outlook, we'll take a peek at that. The skills outlook, these are those sexy skills, remember? So for the next 4 to 5 years, you want to make sure that you have acquired a lot of these skills that have been outlined by the World Economic Forum, just so you can make sure that your future earning potential is going to be there. So I'm going to go ahead and skip down to page 30. So just right into the meat of it, new jobs and lost jobs through 2027. If you take a look at this table, it has the types of jobs, and these are general job titles, not anything overly specific, but it gives you an idea in the blue of which jobs are growing, and in the purple, which jobs are shrinking. So, for example, right at the top, AI and machine learning specialists. You can see that big blue line. That indicates there's a high demand for that type of skill set globally. So, of course, the US is a key driver in the World Economic Forum. So, you can assume that those are the same skills that are going to be in demand through 2027 for the US as well. Just a quick scan: business intelligence analyst, information security analyst, financial technology engineers, data analysts, and scientists. All of these are high in demand skills. I talked about my career in digital transformation. You can see there's a pretty big demand for those skills as well over the next 4 to 5 years. Digital marketing and strategy. If you have your own business, for example, if you're an entrepreneur, that skill set and how you market and advertise your business is really important, and it also can apply to a corporate job. So maybe your business is your side hustle at this point, that you are working to make that your long-term goal in terms of your employment. Well, you can use those digital marketing and strategy skills now that you're working on for your business, as well as for your work portfolio, and to support and bolster your personal brand.
Cento, I
So
have a
just
question.
absolutely, Sharon, go ahead.
And this may be a little bit around the whole overall topic, but I want to find out, like, when we talk about entrepreneurship and having the business, I've seen a few people do this where they'll put on their resume or in an interview, say they have a business, even though they're applying for the job or while they're at the job. Is it okay to do that depending on the type of job you're applying for, to maybe have that on your resume that you have that skill, or in an interview say, hey, I have my side business, let's say if it's consulting, is that okay to do?
That's a great question, and it really depends, Sharon. And this is my HR hat that I'm wearing here. You really want to think about, is your business that you have on the side, one, is it going to be viewed as a potential distraction from the job that you're applying for or that you're currently in? For example, from a time commitment standpoint, will you have to leave work early on a regular basis in order to do the business that you have? So it's a tricky question, and it really varies by company, company policy, as well as their leadership. There's also a second aspect to it that's referred to as a conflict of interest. A lot of companies, especially larger organizations, they'll have a policy, a company policy, that states that if there's anything that's a potential conflict of interest in terms of outside investments or outside relationships with, let's say, a client of the company that you work for. If you have a business relationship with one of those clients, for example, it could be viewed as a conflict of interest. And most companies, they really want to just understand what the relationship is or may be, and then document it, just so they have a record of it and knowledge of it. And they will absolutely allow it to proceed without any problems. So it's really a case-by-case basis on whether or not that your actual business is something that you want to put on your resume. You can always promote the skills, right? The skills that you've learned from your side business or things like that. You can incorporate those into your resume and prove that you know how to do those things. But it's a little bit more difficult of a question, I think, because it varies based on company policy and how lenient or flexible is that company when it comes to actually having people that have dual passions, right? The old way of working was you worked for a company for 30 years, you retired, you got a gold watch or a gold bracelet, and you moved on. Those days are over. Well, it's still a lot of companies that are struggling with, how do I have an employee that does the job responsibilities that I have and they do them very well, but also they have these other things where they're building their own skill set, developing their own personal brand. How do we bring those two things together as a company and manage those types of employees? Companies are getting it wrong a lot, and they're shunning a lot of employees that have all of these additional skills and expertise and energy and passion, because companies, they have no idea how to manage both an employee that's inspired by the work that they do at work, as well as they're inspired by what they do in their personal time. It's a really big struggle at this point. So that's a great question, Sharon. Hopefully I gave you enough information there to kind of understand that it's nuance to it, and it really depends on the company policy that your company has, and how big the company is in terms of what brand identity would they be wanting to protect by having you work for them, but also have a business on the side.
And I appreciate your answering and providing the detail, Cento, because there are a few positions that will put in the skills or attributes entrepreneurial mindset. So it's like, if I say that, is it like you say, and just maybe highlight the skills on the resume, but don't just necessarily come out in an interview and say, hey, yeah, I got this business. But unless they ask, maybe is a way to kind of work around it, and you have to make a judgment call on that.
Yeah, and that's a great point. The next resource I'm going to show, it's going to show you how to word those skills so with the exact right terminology, so it scores high in applicant tracking systems when you go and actually apply for jobs, as well as how to take your real life business experience, for example, put it in the right words so it's translated properly into business skills that you can apply at any company that you might work for. I knew that was going to be a tough challenge, because that part of how jobs work is changing right now too. So I have a great resource for you on that next. All right, so just to finish up here, I'm not going to spend too much time on this report. You can see it's 300 pages, and it breaks down this information by country as well, for some of the top countries and the top 10 skills that are being looked for. So I'm going to show just a little bit of that, and then we're going to move to the next resource. So for this one, I do want to emphasize the jobs that you see here in purple with the longer lines. A good example: accounting, bookkeeping, and payroll clerks. If you know of anyone that's in accounting, that does bookkeeping or payroll, this is the type of information that they need to be aware of, simply because their demand in the job market is starting to shrink, because now there's technology and artificial intelligence that will do a lot of those types of tasks that have been baked into accounting jobs, bookkeeping, and payroll jobs. So I really want to emphasize that this information can really help shape what you decide to work on and double down on in terms of skills and value over the next couple of years. A good example: bank tellers and related clerks. So who's gone to the bank in the last, I would say, 2 months and actually had to talk to a teller? Not very many, I'm pretty sure, right? It's all done from your phone, or from the bank's website, or by using their ATM, right? So this type of information, like I said, it can really help shape what you decide to work on, but also where opportunities might be from an innovation standpoint if you're an entrepreneur. Everything in blue, you really want to take a good hard look at these opportunities and these skills and the job opportunities, but also the problems that exist in the communities. So you can apply these types of solutions to those problems that may exist. So really good information here. This shows you the largest job growth in millions, and it just puts them into buckets and categories. Business development professionals, you can see there's going to be a lot of demand. So if you're an entrepreneur doing that, People Connect, for example, Sharon, it definitely shows that you're on the right path. And this is a product and a service that's going to be in high demand for the next few years. Real quick, largest job decline. Take a look at this when you look at the report too. And if you have family members that are in any of these roles, or you may have older children that are either going off to college or coming home from college and looking to find their next opportunity, these are the positions you really want to steer away from. Not because they're all going away completely, that's not the case, but the demand for those positions over the next several years is definitely going to decline. So that's the type of information I wanted to share with you today from the World Economic Forum and the Future of Jobs report. So before we move on, I just want to pause, see if there's any questions before we take a look at our next resource.
No questions.
All right, excellent. So for resource number 2, sorry, go back one. Here we go. I'm not sure if you've heard of, it's pronounced Sophia. It's a skills framework for the information age. So Sharon, when you mentioned about taking those business skills that you have and how can you translate those into jobs that you may apply for in the future, or for internal promotions and things like that to show that you have those skills, this is a framework that you can use. Sophia is an international framework of organizations that have come together to work to identify and standardize the language around skills, specifically from a technology standpoint. So just to jump right in, this is a free resource. You can register on Sophia. It's SFIA-online. So you can register with them, create an account, and you will have access to these same resources. I'm going to provide you with everything that I share during this call as well. So you don't even have to go download it if you don't want to. I'll work with Sharon and we'll make sure that her and her team gets these resources to you on Monday. So Sophia, here's their most recent skills chart. If you work in a technology specifically, this is going to be helpful. So let's say, for example, you work in delivery and operation. You're an IT project manager, for example. Here you can see it lists all of the technology skills. Let me zoom in just a bit for you. So all of the technology skills that you're expected, if you keep the systems running every day, you do application support, when issues come up, you work tickets that your internal clients may open if they have an issue, incident management, for example. And it takes each of these skill categories and applies a knowledge level to it. So for example, you'll see the numbers 1 through 7. That indicates the level of knowledge that you have around that particular skill. So on this summary chart, if I scroll down to the bottom, you'll see right here, levels of responsibility down in the bottom right. So if you're level 1 in terms of your skills, your sexy skills, for example, that means that you can follow. You know, when I started my first consulting job, I should have been a level 1 where I needed to follow some senior resources around for a while. So I didn't have that imposter syndrome, right? Where I was more prepared to help the client that I was sent on location and on site to. They don't tell you those things in their interview of, oh, well, you know, you're starting this role, you're going to be on site with clients immediately. You might want to make sure that your skill level is at an ensure and advise versus, oh, this is a first consulting job for a resource. He's really green. Maybe we should have him tag along for 3 months just to kind of learn the ropes. So these are ways for you to protect yourself as well. to not be put in those tough positions by organizations because they maybe didn't disclose a realistic preview of what the job actually looked like, or if you were going into a toxic situation, for example. Those are the types of things that you really want to pay attention to when it comes to identifying these skills and which level you're on. Don't leave it up to your boss to define that for you. Be proactive, go out, take a look at these skill sets and try to define it for yourself so you have an idea of, oh, in this area, I'm a level 4. So I want to work personally from a personal development plan standpoint to become a level 6 over the next 12 months. How do I do that? And how do I work and partner with my leadership in order to make that happen? Sometimes there may be internal courses and training that you can take that the company offers, but sometimes you may have to get a lot of this knowledge and a lot of these skills on your own, especially if they're aligned to the World Economic Forum's Future of Jobs report. Those are the sexy skills in terms of they're in demand, but there's not a whole lot of companies, right, that are pushing that training to their employees, except the really, really big ones. If you're fortunate to work for one of them, you're probably getting exposure to some of that training. If you're not working for one of those really large companies, then it's really going to fall more on you to go back and acquire some of those skills. So I want to show a little bit of the detail behind each of these skills. On the same site, they have a skills listing from A to Z of all of the skills that are included in the framework. Business administration, benefits management, if you're on the human resources side. Sharon, I know you've been doing business process improvement for well over 20 years. So this one is one that may resonate with you. I mean, everything is out here. Data science, data visualization. Sharon, I know you and Adefemi have done some business intelligence work, Power BI, things like that. This is where you identify which skills and how to word those skills on your resume so you can get the highest ranking in the applicant tracking systems and get those callbacks so you can actually get interviewed for the skills that you actually have in your portfolio. One more resource here. They have a spreadsheet of all of these skills. I have it open here. So in column A, just real quick, you'll see each of the levels, 1 all the way down to 7. For each of the skills, these are the different aspects that each skill is defined by. So if you're a level 1, for example, when it comes to autonomy in a particular area, that means that you should work under close direction and supervision. You will use little of your own discretion in terms of answering client questions, for example, like the position that I was in when I got my first consulting job, and you're expected to seek guidance in unexpected situations. So that first client meeting that I went into, that was an unexpected situation. So from an autonomy standpoint, I would have been a level 1. That's a perfect example. You can also go all the way down to, okay, well, what does a level 7 look like? At the highest organizational level, has authority over all aspects of a significant area of work, including policy formation and application. Is fully accountable for actions taken and decisions made, both by self and others to whom responsibilities have been assigned. So it gives you someone new that's coming into that role, the skills that they might have in terms of autonomy, but also what might the senior leader have in terms of skills and the job that they do in terms of managing others and setting policy and procedure for that particular part of the business. So it breaks. Oh, go ahead, Sharon. Absolutely.
Question. I want to sync up what we're looking at. So is this table like a way of a self-assessment in a relationship to a certain job position or career?
Yes, it is. So it's used in at least 2 ways. One way is by smart HR teams to help define new roles and responsibilities when a company is going through a transformation or transition. So for example, on this first tab, you'll see skills. And we took a look at the skills online, but here's a list of all of the skills. Acceptance testing, application support, for example, internal audit, project management is on here as a good example. So you can filter by skill. This is going to tell you the what, but the level of responsibility is going to tell you where, in terms of a number 1 through a number 7, are you qualified in that particular skill. When it comes to autonomy, organizational influence, the complexity of things you work on, and then the actual business skills and applying those skills to the business. It tries to translate, Sharon. So if you're at a shipping and logistics company and you're a project manager, it tries to translate that so you can be a project manager in an oil and gas organization, but you're assessing it the same way with the same terminology and the same knowledge, skills, and abilities across the board. So that way you can set pay for project managers in both of those different organizations because of the similarities in what they're actually doing, not how this company does it and how they word it. So that means that, oh, no other project managers do it like we do. No, it tries to bring those two together and make a consistent translation between the two. So that's how individuals can use it as well to say, for my resume, instead of me listing everything that I did for my organization as a project manager in our own terminology that no other company uses and will recognize, let me translate what I did into international language from a skills standpoint that will help any organization understand that, oh, this person is a solid project manager with 20 years of experience, and they've done every single thing that we ask of our project managers. Maybe they called it something different. The systems were different at their old company, but it's the exact same skills. And that's what we want to hire and bring into our organization. Someone that can learn a new way of doing things, but their core skills are exactly what's in demand today.
Would you mind let me walk through an example with my own background just to kind of on one of your filters. So going back to the skills over there, and this may help somebody just from the, like you said, the individual standpoint. If you click on the business, you could do the business process improvement one. Okay. So if I'm looking at this and I'm trying to, like you say, tweak my resume, I would be looking at it saying, okay, I'm trying to see what terminology, like, am I looking at the guidance, the roles, and then the level of responsibility? So this is level 5, 6, and 7. That's what I'm seeing over there, right? So if I come over to the levels of responsibility, I associate those categories, that levels over there in terms of what the autonomy and the influence, et cetera, would be like.
Exactly. And what you'll see in this model is that in order to do business process improvement, you should already have 1, 2, 3, and 4.
And 4.
That's why it started in 5. Because if you have the skills to do business process improvement, the assumption by the framework is that you're not just starting out. Right? When I just started out as a consultant, I didn't have the chops in terms of business process improvement when my autonomy level and my influence level was a level 1. So that's what this framework helps you to do. It helps you to right size your skills to say, if you've done business process improvement in this example for 20 years, these are the skills that you want to emphasize on your resume. The skills for level 5, 6, and 7 that you've been doing. You don't want to lead with, I've been doing flow charts for a really long time, and I'm great at flow charts. Well, flow chart may be just a level 2, for example, right? entry-level work, or maybe an intern is able to do that with the proper training. So those are the types of skills you don't want to lead with on your resume. You really want to focus on level 5 skills. And that's what the model will identify for you here. So you see, it starts with those exact skills, manages the execution of business process improvements. So for example, with business process improvement, maybe you were given the task of re-engineering a total process, as well as implementing a new screen in your ERP system to support that process. That is what you want to lead with in terms of your resume, in terms of how you present yourself in interviews. You want to talk about you manage the total execution of that business improvement process, not just you met with all of the different business leaders and did flow charts, for example.
Well, right. And I do think I'm doing a little bit better than that one, that paid the way you said it there versus like you said, but this is allowing a more strategic approach, and the framework gives you something to say like, okay, well, yeah, if I got terminology from level 1 and 2, and I already have that, I need to exclude a lot of that off of the resume.
Absolutely. Focus on what you want, right? If you want that next role to be more strategic work, because you have the depth and breadth of experience, this is what you want to emphasize, where you've either led on these types of tasks, or you've been a big partner in terms of working with your leadership and shaping policy, for example, around the particular use of a new technology, and things like that, right? So develops organizational policy standards and guidelines for business process improvement. You may not have directly written the policy yourself, but if you partner with your leadership to understand what were some of the boundaries that the organization needed to consider, if maybe you worked with HR to get their input as well on what your leader ultimately got approved, you want to incorporate those types of skills into your resume, because it's going to take you a long way with those sexy skills, right? A lot of times we just don't have this information, and we lead with what we've done for the longest amount of time. And that may just be the level 1, 2, and 3 stuff, which, yes, it's great that we have those skills, but that's not going to get you the big role for the next big move that you're looking
for. Okay.
All right. So any other questions on Sophia and the framework? Like I said, I'll provide all this information to each of you after the call. But these are the sexy skills, and this wraps up this portion. But I wanted to share, because I know a lot of people are going through some really tough times right now in terms of the industry disruptions that are occurring, a lot of the change that's happening. Employees aren't being given much notice that companies are going in a new direction and they're no longer required. So I want to put this information out for anybody that's willing to take a look at it, so they can realign themselves with the future, to make sure that not only for themselves, but also their friends, their family members, especially young people that are thinking about should they go to college, or maybe in college and will be looking and entering the job market fairly soon. This is the type of information that I feel that they'll need in order to really make sure that they make a solid decision in terms of what they do with their talent and skills. So I get really excited about this part. So I really wanted to share this information to make sure it was in your hands before we talk about the unsexy skills. Any other questions on that piece?
Not at the moment from my end. Anybody else, don't be afraid. Don't be shy.
Absolutely. It's an open discussion. I'm here to serve today, Saturday, so thank you for joining.
Adefemi, do you have a question?
No, I was just going to say it has been insightful so far, and then you can proceed.
All right. So for our next resource, the unsexy hidden demand skills. This is one that I am extremely passionate about. I'm not sure if your companies right now are talking about workplace mental health, it's a very big topic right now for those that are impacted by it. And I want to make sure that when I say mental health, workplace mental health, for what I'm talking about today, I'm not talking about a mental health diagnosis, right? Schizophrenia for you. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the stress and the anxiety that comes with the situations that we're placed in when we go to work. So earlier, when I talked about me starting my first consulting job, not really being ready for the situation that I was put in, feeling that imposter syndrome, that could have ended poorly. That was very traumatic for me, just being a young person, very first, really big job that I was super excited for. It really ended up being traumatic for me, but it turned into a traumatic positive incident for me because I had leadership, someone that showed grit, resilience, and they were able to say no to the chaos that shielded me, that created a safe space for me. Going back to Debbie and how she helped me in my career, she became my office hero at that point, right? Every day that I went into the office, I couldn't wait to see Debbie and check on her. Hey, how are you doing? How's it going? Do you need anything? Because she was my office hero after that. Well, Debbie started missing a lot of work. So I would go into the office and, I'd ask my boss, hey, is Debbie here? I don't see her in her cube. No, she's out sick today, Cento. A few more days would go by. Hey, where's Debbie? I hadn't seen her. Well, Cento, we're going to have one of the analysts step up and be the project manager. Debbie's still out sick. Well, my boss was very close friends with Debbie. A lot of the senior consultants, they had a very tight relationship. They had worked with each other and traveled, all around to just about every state doing implementation. So they knew Debbie very well. Well, they knew that Debbie had cancer. I didn't know. I was still the new person, the fresh face, running around trying to be a sponge to soak up everything. Well, Debbie had cancer. That was why she missed so much work. And unfortunately, she would come back into the office for a few days. Of course, my eyes would light up. Hey, Debbie, how are you doing? And she always looked great. She never looked sick or anything like that. But she was going through a struggle. We ended up losing Debbie. She lost her battle with cancer, and I was devastated. It kind of came out of nowhere for me. So those are the traumatic things, right, that we go throughout our career. We're not really taught to grieve, right? We don't know, how to react in those situations, but we still keep moving forward. I kept pressing forward. I have all of the credentials up to show you just how she inspired me throughout my career. If we do that today, with the level of technology that we all have phones with notifications every few seconds. We have people emailing us, text messaging us, coming to our desk. We have all of these distractions, and then you turn on the news. It's unspeakable, the things that you see. There's not very much that's there to build us up, that's there to empower us. And it's creating a crisis for our workforce and a crisis for especially the younger generations. They're not seeing enough of the positivity around to keep them from developing the signs or the symptoms of a mental health disorder. So these are those unsexy skills that as a leader, if you can begin to show that you're aware of this crisis that's beginning and how you can help, these are the leadership skills that will get you promoted. They will help you get into people leadership roles, because you'll see this information that I have up. It's from the U.S. Surgeon General. So the Surgeon General is basically the nation's doctor. The U.S. Department of Health Services, they actually have a doctor, the Surgeon General, that works with a team of physicians to understand what are some of the public health threats that are emerging right now in the United States. They did a survey in 2021. That survey showed that 76% of US workers that were surveyed had at least one symptom of a mental health condition. It could have been too much stress in their day-to-day work, anxiety over what they did. Maybe it wasn't stress so much because they had a lot of experience, but when you have too many meetings, for example, or you have workplace dynamics issues or internal office politics, all of those things start to weigh on your mind and body. This framework that's been put out by the U.S. Surgeon General, one, it acknowledges those struggles that the workforce is having, but it also puts data to it, and it creates an environment to where companies can now start to implement programs to get more leverage out of their mental health resources that they may offer employees. We have to get rid of that stigma that's behind it when the numbers get this high. Going back to the survey, 84% of the respondents that they talked to said that the workplace conditions contributed to at least one mental health challenge, 84%. Another survey by Mental Health America showed that 81% of workers reported they're looking for workplaces that support mental health in the future. A lot of companies may not have this type of framework in place. They may have mental health benefits, for example, but guess what? A lot of Americans still can't afford it even if you have insurance. Let's take an example of, let's say you make $50,000 per year. You work for a major organization. They offer great benefits. And when I say great benefits, you know, it's one of the leading benefits providers. We know them all. But that company may have what's called a high deductible plan, which means that your benefits don't kick in until you pay your deductible out of pocket. If that deductible is, let's say, $3,000, you have to pay $3,000 of your own medical expenses before your company benefits might kick in. Well, a lot of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. A $3,000 expense just to be able to get adequate mental health care and mental health resources, that just won't work. So what happens a lot is the mental health issues will go untreated. Even like I said, if it's not an actual diagnosis, if you're just curious about it or want to talk to someone, the environment right now isn't really set up to put employees and individuals that may not be working in a position to take advantage of the resources that might be available to them. So these are the details, the 5 essentials for workplace mental health being that's been put out by our government, the White House, the U.S. Surgeon General. They have very hardworking people that are thinking about important things like this, and they're trying to help companies get it right. Because right now, when it's a top priority of the U.S. Surgeon General, that means that as companies are working today with the change that we're going through, they're getting it wrong. So these are those unsexy skills I want you to be able to take a look at. The first one of 5, protection from harm. You know, when I started that first consulting job, I was in no danger. You know, I don't want to blow that out of proportion or anything like that, but I was still impressionable at that time. And had I been given just a heads up of, hey, this project, it's not going well. So, you know, just, you know, watch what you say in the meeting and, you know, just make sure you're prepared to answer questions and things like that. If I had been given some of that background context, I would have been fine, right? But when you don't have those things, it can derail your career. And that's what I'm here talking to you today about, is how to make sure you can see around corners, how to make sure you're not blindsided by what's going on in the workplace or in your business. And Sharon, this one is for you specifically, connection and community, where people connect, right? This connection part is so important. And I'm so glad this is something that you've been working on for a really long time, and it's come to fruition simply because you can see if the U.S. Surgeon General says we need it, you're definitely on the right path. So that's part of the reason why I'm here today with you, Sharon.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Work-life harmony. How many of us, and Sharon, we talked about this earlier with your questions, if you are an entrepreneur, but you're also a polished and experienced professional, how do you balance the two, right? Now, if the U.S. Surgeon General in our government in the U.S., if they can see and realize that, oh, wow, we do have multi-skilled people in our workforce in the U.S., we need to figure out as organizations, how do we balance that? Because a lot of times, all of the skills that we bring to the workplace, I would say maybe 60% of them, you kind of have to keep in your pocket, right? They're not in your job description, or there's another team that does that. Or, oh yeah, you won't get to work with that software. Yep, we use it, but that team over there uses it. So yeah, you can't really learn that. Focus on what we've asked you to do, right? You don't want to have to keep those skills stored away for too long if you're passionate about it, if they're tied to what you feel your purpose might be in life, or if you're just genuinely curious and interested in those skills. So this framework helps companies to understand that, guess what? You need to find a way to give employees opportunities to balance and use both of their skill sets. Hire the whole person is how I like to look at that. Hire the whole person. Some companies are comfortable with doing that because they have great, highly skilled HR teams and business savvy leaders that understand that, wow, if we can get just a little bit extra engagement from our employees, not only will productivity go up, but engagement and morale will go up as well, because people will love to work for companies like that. Mattering at work, dignity, having meaning and believing in what you do is really important. And then lastly, just opportunity for growth, right? Am I stagnant in my role? For those skills that I mentioned in the World Economic Forum's report, can I actually try some of those things if I want to, even though they're not a part of my immediate job responsibility? Does my manager know any of those skills, right? And can I learn from a leader that's interested in growing as well? Those things are important. You're going to see a lot more, I think, information on LinkedIn about the opportunity for growth. There's a person that you definitely need to follow on LinkedIn when it comes to learning and development out of human resources. His name is Josh Burson. And I'll put that information in the resources that I provide. But Josh Burson, he is an international consultant when it comes to human resources, when it comes to people, process, and technology innovation. Follow him. Look at his post. Read the comments that people are posting, because he makes these things a priority in terms of what he's trying to identify and get HR organizations to adapt to with all of the change that's going on. So Josh Burson is someone that you really want to follow on LinkedIn if you want to stay up to date in terms of what HR is doing currently and what they should be doing, just in terms of providing more opportunity and growth for workforces worldwide. One more resource from the U.S. Surgeon General here. This resource is designed to help you start to have those conversations at work, or if you're an entrepreneur, you can start to have these conversations at team with your team, just to make sure that your teams aren't overworked, right? And they have high levels of stress and anxiety and high demands that are causing them to maybe slip on their deadlines, maybe not fully understand the tasks that are being given to them because they're currently overwhelmed, especially if you're a freelancer and you multitask and you have multiple clients that you support. I'll face that as a consultant sometimes. When demand is high, I have multiple people and multiple clients that I'm serving. So I have to make sure that I'm in a good place so I can provide excellent customer service and be there when my clients need me. So I love this guide because it puts some of those difficult conversations around those unsexy skills, around just feelings and emotions and soft skills. It puts those into words of just a conversation where you can ask. There's one good one I want to scroll down to. This is a great one. How are we ensuring that no one needs to work during their off hours? Now, do you think your leadership team right now is sitting around the table when they meet? Are they asking this question? How can we make sure nobody needs to work off hours? I laugh at that. I'm sorry. I've been in those leadership meetings. This was not a question that we asked each other. When I was vice president of business transformation, I didn't ask, man, how can I make sure that my team doesn't have to work on Saturdays and Sundays or answer my emails at midnight? And in those times, I have to admit and be accountable, right? I wasn't the best leader. I saw the end goal, but sometimes I ran red lights when it came to questions like this. I ran stop signs. So I learned to hold myself accountable the more experienced I got in terms of not doing damage to others just because I'm a perfectionist when it comes to projects and implementations and transformation and being on time and on budget, right? We have to be able to have some self-reflection and some introspection to realize that, man, I can mess people up with the way that I work if I have on blinders and I'm not checking my rear view, right? So these are great questions, great conversation starters that I'll be sharing with you as well. I encourage you, take a look at these. If you choose to share them with your leadership team, be careful, right? They may not be in a place right now to incorporate this into what they do every day. This is a very tough time, not just for employees and people that are looking for employment, but it's a very tough time for leadership as well, right? Change is change. When companies are being acquired or when they're being merged, leadership changes direction, strategy changes often. And if you're managing people, you're often not equipped with the information or the resources to help your staff overcome some of these challenges. So that's the whole point of the U.S. Surgeon General's 5 essentials for workplace mental health and well-being. It's a conversation starter at this point, and that's it. The rest, unfortunately, it's on us. It's on people like me as leaders, as experienced in the world of business. My contribution back needs to be something like this to help these conversations with less senior employees, as well as with senior employees that maybe have ran some of those same stop signs, right? We have to have that community portion as well. So Sharon, I think you're taking on the connection piece. A lot of what I'm looking to do moving forward is that community piece. So we can make sure that as experienced professionals, we're actually giving back to the people out there that need it most. And that's what I'm most excited about personally. Hopefully you can see it in the way that I present and the passion that I have around these topics.
Yes, it's been from the beginning since you started. Yes, you can see the passion, wealth of information that all of the sites you've been to, as much as I'm spending time researching online, I've not come across. So that right off the top has proven to be valuable to me, that I will be going back, getting a screenshot of the URLs.
Absolutely. And I'll provide all of this information too. I'll put it in a neat PDF with all of the links and attachments for everyone to be able to access. Also, I'm on LinkedIn, of course, Cento Sharp, Cento Sharp. Just contact me on LinkedIn. If you see this information live, or if you happen to see it sometime in the future, If you have any questions or any thoughts, I'd love to hear from you and definitely connect. I'll be posting content, this type of content going forward. This is something that I'm extremely passionate about, and I can't wait to basically share what I've learned throughout my career, right? I love coming back to this slide. It's really important to me because I've seen some battles. These are a lot of the credentials that I've had, some of the job titles that I've had. Vice President of Business Transformation. I was Assistant Vice President of Human Resources Information System. Our team touched every single contractor, employee, and vendor record for the entire organization through a growth period where the company grew 3 times the size. I built an HRIS team, an HR systems team that managed all of the employee records, all of the ERP systems for human resources, as well as the applicant tracking systems. I grew a 1-person administrative team to a 16-person team with 3 managers that included HR analytics, right? So I've knocked on some pretty big doors, worked with some amazing people that have taken me under their wing throughout my career, that have shared resources. Now it's my time to give some of that back. And that's what I'm really excited about. So with that, I do want to focus on the last part of our talk. It won't be long, but I want to show more of the solution that I'm working on, that I want to be able to offer to resources going forward. So before I do that, Sharon, I want to stop and pause and just see if there's any questions or thoughts before we move on to the final resource.
Adefemi?
No questions. This is really, really good information, really great websites that I've never heard of before, especially looking for myself, me being in the medical field on the business side. It's very interesting to see in the projection of the next 5 to 7 years what's important, and what type of roles in the medical field, in the business side, will actually be needed.
Absolutely, Tara. And I'm glad you said that, because what I want to talk about now are healthy coping skills. In the medical profession, that's another industry that there's just not enough resources to go around for the issues that are present today in the United States. And that's something that I began to take notice of before the pandemic. So about 6 years ago, that was something that started to resonate with me. And that explains a little bit of why I went back to grad school for medical cannabis science and therapeutics. So we'll talk about that in a little bit, because I definitely understand where you're coming from, Tara. Being in the medical profession, it's a high demand, high stress, high anxiety profession with a lot of demands on it. So you really want to make sure, one, you can take care of yourself so you can do your job that takes care of everybody else, right, as a caregiver. So I'm very passionate about your profession, and I can't wait to talk about it. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. I won't spend very long on this. I know we're coming up on time, but I do want to just share kind of where we are and how I think these things might help. Let's see, so I'm going to minimize that, close a few of these windows. We've covered a lot of good ground today. All right. So here's what I'm working on. I'm going to make this screen larger if I can. I'm starting a new part of my consulting company, Cento Sharp Consulting LLC, called Work-Life Leaf. And what this is the grit, resilience, and the power to say no part to our work and our lives coming together, right? I've created, based on my personal and professional experience, a 5-stage framework for what I call power coping. As I gave examples throughout my career of some really tough moments that I've been in, what I've learned from those moments, and how they shape me as a leader, I've created a framework that I want to be able to share with other people. And it's 5 stages to it: healing, helping, happy, focused, and flourishing. And I'll talk about each one of those in just a second, but It's 5 stages to it on purpose. That first one is healing. Let me come down. Here, you might see my background. It says the struggle. These are topics, some of the most common topics that have occurred throughout my career in digital transformation, in large-scale IT implementations. So this is free content that I'm going to be putting out every week that provides coping strategies for each and every one of the issues that have come up from these types of topics. So for example, I'll come back up, but let me just scroll down here. Previews of the struggle. So if I come here, burnout busters, we've all been burned out at some point where we were really busy. Maybe we had the job title we want, we had the position that we wanted, but you know what? We lost our fire and desire for that particular role. So what the struggle is going to do, it's going to provide you practical coping strategies for this particular situation. So you can actually have a thought process and resources to help you think through, wow, why am I burnt out? What might be going on? What are some of the best practices that I can do around being burnt out? If you don't have a leader that you can go to and say, wow, you know, Susan, I love what I'm doing. I know you recently promoted me and gave me a raise. This is great, but I'm just burnt out. I'm not excited about what I do anymore. These are the types of resources that'll help you if you don't have a leader that you can talk to or that you might feel comfortable with talking to about that right off the bat, right? Sometimes we have to get our thoughts together before we can have that type of conversation. You don't want to brainstorm on these types of things with your leader in most cases. You really want to be well thought out. So that's what the struggle, the weekly content that I'm going to be providing on LinkedIn is going to provide. Possible coping strategies, right? And I have multiple topics. Another one, when to walk away. When do you just leave an opportunity, right? When it's no longer healthy for you to be there, when it's no longer a safe space for you to be there. If the team is toxic, for example. And when I say when to walk away, make sure you have an exit strategy, a plan, right? You don't want to just leave your opportunity if you don't have something else lined up, for example, or if you haven't thought, how am I going to make sure the bills are paid? Because I want to find a more healthy environment to work in, right? So this is the type of content I'm going to be giving away for absolutely free, just the lessons learned throughout my career, so we can become more accountable and take ownership for our experience, and of course, become more empowered as we move forward. I'm super excited about this. I have over 60 of these that will be published if you follow me on LinkedIn. So make sure you follow me. You'll start seeing this information at the beginning of May. And this is one that's really near and dear to my heart. When work interferes, right? When you get that great job, but you're working 60 to 70 hours a week, what happens with the rest of the family? What happens with the kids in soccer practice, for example? Or what happens with the relationship that you're in? How do you balance that? You know, I think this goes back to a lot of what the US Surgeon General was talking about in terms of work-life harmony. You may love your job. You may love spending those 60 to 70 hours delivering your projects on time, on budget, growing departments and hiring people and things like that. But what happens when your home life begins to fall apart? I can tell you this, it will ultimately affect your work life. If you're not happy at home, eventually you're going to have some very tough decisions to make. So that's the type of insight I'll be sharing. Really excited about this. There's no holds barred. I won't be talking about specific companies or anything like that. No, this is about you. This is about resources for you, where to look, just like we look for skills resources, right? It's how can you build your own skills, your own portfolio, your own way of thinking in order to make sure that you're working, you're in demand, your family's healthy, you're healthy, and you can leave a legacy for all of the above. That's what this information is going to help with. And this is just the free content for what I'm working on. Let me come back up real quick and I'll pause for questions in a second. But just to break down the model, so that's the free content I'll be sharing. Here, the actual framework, starting with focused. This is workplace dynamic skills. This is where you'll get resources on communication, conflict management, office politics, and a safe space designed for learning. So that's a part of the community. This is going to be my biggest contribution, I think, to the community going forward is, like I said, just me sharing more of those tidbits on political agility, how to make sure that you understand what you may be contributing to a poor or toxic situation unknowingly. There's a workshop that I'm working on. It's called Mastering Your Superhero and Your Supervillain, because we all have both. We all have skills that we're great at, and when things are going well, oh, we leverage those skills and we're seen as rock stars. But when things are going bad, when there's a lot of change, there's a lot of conflict in the role, maybe you're overworked and not given a lot of resources to do that work. There's a supervillain inside of you too, where you start to use defense mechanisms, gaslighting, undermining your leadership, for example. You don't do those things on purpose, but you do those things just out of self-defense, right? If everyone else is being petty or maybe attacking others or undermining others, you have to do it to survive if you're in that environment. Well, this allows you to kind of see that, recognize it in yourself, and choose whether or not this is the type of behavior that you want to apply in your role. Or maybe it's time to find a new role where they don't pull that part out of you, right? So workplace dynamics, focused is an acrostic. And what that stands for, I've given this meaning over the past 20 years throughout my career, is finishing outstanding commitments under stress, especially distractions. And what that is when you have to be focused, when you can't lose your job right now, you have to make sure that you get that certification, or you have to make sure that you get that project done, or you have to make sure that the performance improvement plan that your boss just put you on, that you have to check all of those boxes by the very next quarter. This is what this module, this is what this information is going to help you with, to make sure you finish those outstanding commitments under stress, especially when there's distractions at bay. So I'm excited about that part, but that's just one. I want to pause right there. Any questions before I just briefly cover? I'm going to spend about 5 minutes covering the rest, and then we'll be able to close and have a broader question set. But I just want to see if there's any questions before I move on to the next 5 minutes.
I'm good until the closing part. Cento, I do have some questions. Tara, you got a question?
No, I was just going to say the same. No questions right now.
All right, excellent. So I'll make it quick. Here, happy. This is that work-life balance piece. Finding those healthy boundaries so you can say no. Just a quick example. When I was in human resources, and I mentioned we went from that one-person administrative team to a 16-person team with 3 different managers and an analytics team. In order to do that, I had to justify all of the resources that I needed every step of the way. So I had to say no a lot. The way I said no to my leadership was, and I encourage you to do this as well, show your work. And what I mean by that is every single value added task that my team was doing, as we added 1 person, as we added 2 more people, we documented. And we kept that on an inventory of value added tasks that we provided to our HR team. So they could immediately see that, oh, wow. So for new hires, you processed 800 new hires over the past 6 months. Okay, so we understand that, yes, you may need an additional resource next quarter in order to be able to keep up with the volume. When you can document and just basic tasks, but make sure those tasks are the value added tasks, you can then negotiate with your leader and say, hey, we just got the new hires put in for this past month. What would you like for me to take off the list before I work on something new? If your leadership, especially in a time of change and growth and conflict within the organization, if they don't have immediate visibility to what you're working on, there's no way that they're going to realize that you're overworked or that you need attention. You know, maybe everyone may be overworked, but in your case, you may be overworked and you need additional resources. Well, if you just wait for the weekly status meeting with your boss, or maybe the bi-weekly one-on-one, that's too late. Get them a list of everything that you're working on that your team has so they can see it. And when your team knocks something off of that list, ask your boss at that point, hey boss, I just finished, task number 17, 18, and 20 on my list. What do you want me to work on next? When you're proactive like that, you give your boss the opportunity to say, oh yeah, thanks for doing that. Now take on this task. It just gives you much more visibility in the organization, and it proves that you may need a little bit more work or that you're working a little bit too much, and then your boss can help you to make adjustments. I've worked for a lot of different bosses in a lot of different organizations. Most are very reasonable if you put them in a position to be successful, even during times of change. So that's the type of insight that we'll be sharing in our community, and that you'll be able to get insight from, so you can make sure that you have that work-life balance. 20 years of consulting and leadership roles, you're going to get the nuggets for this information. We talked about mental and physical health, the healing part. One thing here, just make sure that when something affects you, whether it's at work, whether it's at home, admit it to yourself at some point, right? Admit that, wow, that hurt me. Or wow, I was taken aback by that. I wasn't expecting that one, right? Admit it to yourself. Your brain and your body will automatically start thinking about solutions once you admit you're hurt. Right now, a lot of us, we aren't taught that this is okay, to admit that something hurt us, something confused us, something threw us off. A big part of what we're going to be talking about there is on the helping side, with life changes and challenges. Here it's about self-esteem, protecting and managing our self-esteem, and then dealing with disappointment. Disappointment in politics, potentially, disappointment in ourselves. Maybe we dropped the ball on a project. Maybe we feel disappointed because our business isn't where we think it needs to be at this point, just as an example, right? There's content that's going to help with how do you manage disappointment in yourself and others? How do you let yourself heal, go through the process of recovering from that disappointment? But at the same time, how do you hold yourself accountable for acknowledging it, healing it, and moving on? A lot of times we get stuck with that disappointment piece, and it just balloons into other challenges and other issues in our life. Here, these are going to be resources about what's going on at home as well. For example, if you're faced with being unhoused, if you've been laid off and you've been out of work for a year, for example, you have burned through savings. You have burned through other resources that were there to help you potentially. What's available from our government, right? What's available in your community in terms of support systems that can help you get back on your feet? We're going to talk about the real things when it comes to the employee and the workforce, as well as your family, because I want to make sure that we use this technology, artificial intelligence, and things like that to make sure that we're all okay at the end of the day. So that's the helping piece. Lastly, it encompasses all of it, is flourishing. How do we get to the point where we have that resilience, where we know what resources are available to us to help us have a better work life? You know, what resources are available to us to help us negotiate with our leadership team to protect that work-life balance that we now have. And then with our most precious asset, right, our mental and physical health, what resources are available there, even if you have benefits, but they're inaccessible for whatever reason, or if you don't want to necessarily bring an issue up to your leader, there are still community resources offered once again by our government, hardworking people that are actually looking to be able to provide help when you need it. So this is something that's going to be launching on May 5th. I'll put information into the deck that includes all of these resources we've covered. I encourage you, go out, take a look at this. If this is something you're interested, it's starting just now. It's been a passion project of mine. I've finally been able to manage my clients to the point where I could dedicate time to this. And not only that, it's urgent. This is something that's very critical. So we're going to be spending a lot of time on this in terms of just supporting people in our community. As I showed Sharon, she spent a lot of time on the connect and the connections piece. This is the community piece. I think that just provides healthy coping skills, healing, helping, being happy, being focused, and flourishing. So I want to stop right there. That concludes what I have. I want to open it up for any feedback or questions.
Thank you, Cento. I'm applauding with my hands here. Hope you can see me. There's a lot here. This is a wealth of information. But I have to say this to you. I didn't expect anything less, knowing you. Tara, I see the hand claps on your end as well. I'm gonna start with a two-part question, and then I'm gonna, I have some other questions, but I'm gonna let Adefemi and Tara take some turns in there. So the first question, Cento, is if someone wanted to connect with you for consulting on their resume, on their resume development, career path, are those some services that you provide that someone can, reach out to you for? That's the first question.
Yes, absolutely. So great question, Sharon. As part of this, I'm going to have a program where I do professional development planning for people. It's a one-on-one conversation. It's held over 3 meetings where we'll get to know each other. I'll share a little bit about my background. You'll help me understand yours, what your situation is at work, what your interests are, and we'll work on what's called a professional development plan. A lot of the larger organizations have that for each of their employees. Well, like I said, I want to empower individuals. So you have that information yourself. You don't have to wait for your company to do it. And you can have 2. You can have one for, oh, okay, this is what I present to work because these are the skills that they're most interested in and that are most in demand in my job. But personally, these are the things that I want to make sure I work on for myself and my family outside of work. So I'll be able to help provide insight on both of those through a professional development plan program that I'm working. So I'll make sure I put that information into the deck as well, just so you kind of have a better idea of what it looks like and how you can get started with that. But the answer is yes, resoundingly.